Hi everyone, this is a Mars Hill Latin 2 lecture for lessons 23 through 25. Okay, so this week we're going to study the rest of the present system in the first conjugation, so the imperfect in the future, passive. Then we're going to learn the second conjugation, passive system, passive voice present system. And then we're going to learn the third conjugation, present passive system. Okay, so last week we talked about the first conjugation, present passive. And we said that the passive is formed by just replacing the active personal endings with passive personal endings. So remember that the active personal endings are o or m, and then st, mus, dis, nt. Now the passive personal endings again are or/r, and then ris, tor, mur, mini, ntor. Okay, so what do we do with the present? We said amor, amaris, amator, amamor, amamini, amantor. Now, let's add to that the imperfect tense. So the way we do the imperfect tense is we're going to have the same stem, we have ama, and then we add our imperfect tense sign. And remember, this is how I always remember it, ba is the imperfect tense sign. And I remember that it's ba because sheep say ba, and sheep are imperfect because they're really dumb, and they can like fall in holes and just not even try to get up. So they're really not very smart. They're imperfect creatures. Imperfect sheep say ba. So that's our imperfect tense sign. All right, so we have stem ama plus imperfect tense sign ba, and then our personal endings again. And we're using the passive one, so that's ris, tor, mur, mini, ntor. So all together, we get amabar, amabaris, amabator, amabamor, amabamini, amabantor. And the way we would translate those, I forgot to mention that last week. We would translate the present, let's say, like this. I am loved, you are loved, he, she, it is loved, we are loved, y'all are loved, they are loved. That's the passive present. For the imperfect, we would get I was being loved, you were being loved, he, she, it was being loved, we were being loved, you all were being loved, and they were being loved. So that's how you would say it in English. Now what about the future tense? So we get the same sort of deal. We're going to take our present stem, ama, and then we add our future tense sign. So that's bo/bi. So we get amabor with the personal ending r. Now, here's something strange. Instead of getting amabiris, which is what we would expect, in the second person singular, we get amaberis with an e. This is just an irregularity that you have to memorize. So, but other than that, you get your regular tense sign bi. So, amaberis, then amabitor, amabimor, amabimini, amabuntor. So in English, that would be I will be loved, you will be loved, he, she, it will be loved, we will be loved, y'all will be loved, they will be loved. Okay, so that's how you form them. Again, it's just replacing the active personal endings with passive personal endings. Okay, then at the bottom of page 70, you have about 10 vocab words, and these are, again, second declension masculine words, and they're pretty important ones, so do memorize them. Okay, then page 71. All that is needed to form the present system passive of all four conjugations is to learn the passive personal endings and practice substituting them for the active personal endings you've always used. So this is just emphasizing that you're not trying to memorize a bunch of separate new conjugations. what you're doing is you're just substituting the passive personal endings. So this should be a really easy step as long as you know the passive personal endings, which again are restor, more, mini, untor. Okay. And here's just one more note, and I already said it, but there's only one irregularity in the whole present passive system, and that is the second person singular of the future, where we would expect it to be ama biris, since the future tense sign is bi, but we get ama bearis, and that's just in the second person singular future and not in any other spot. So that's the one irregularity. Just to review a little bit, remember that a passive verb, the subject is receiving the action of the verb, whereas an active verb, the subject is performing the action of the verb. Okay? All right, so that's all that we have in lesson 23. Let's turn to lesson 24. So in lesson 24, we learned the second conjugation, present system passive voice. So there's nothing new about this from that would be different from the first conjugation. So let's just go through it. We know that what we're going to do to make a verb passive is substitute the passive personal ending. So we get mone, for monea, we get mone as its stem, and then we add or. So moneor, moneris, monetor, monemor, monemini, monentor. Okay, then in the imperfect, again, we're going to have our imperfect tense sign. So monebar, monebaris, monebator, monebamor, monebamini, monebontor. Okay, and then the future. Monebor, then moneberis, monebitor, monebimor, monebimini, monebuntor. Now, you may have noticed a problem. The future second person singular is exactly the same as in its ending only as the present second person singular. We still have the be, which makes it different. But just notice and remember that moneris is present, where moneberis is future. Okay? Then we have about 10 neuter second declension words that are going to be used in your homework, so memorize those. And then on page 73, we get some grammar. Note that the same irregularity in the second person singular future, where the ending is beris rather than bieris. You should highlight this form in your book. I'm always a fan if you don't have to give your book to a younger sibling, or if that younger sibling doesn't care. I'm always a fan of highlighting things like that. But only highlight important things. Don't just start drawing pictures in the book, because then you'll get confused later about what's important highlighting and what's just doodling. Okay? Okay, so we talked, I think, let me make sure. Yeah. In lesson 22, we talked about something called ablative of agent. And that was when, in a passive verb, we have the agent who is doing the action. So remember, the subject of a passive verb is receiving the action. So another word is doing the action. And that word is used with a or ab plus the ablative. So our example was the Gauls were conquered by Caesar, which we translated a Caesare, by Caesar. That was called the ablative of agent, because that is a living thing that did the action. Okay, here's another ablative construction in lesson 24 that we're on. It's called the ablative of means. So the ablative without a preposition is used to express non-living agent, or the means, or the instrument, or of the action. The noun in the ablative case can be translated with the prepositions by or with the precise meaning by means of. So for example, I can say, the boys are frightened by the sword. So in that case, the sword itself is not a living agent. It's a non-living agent or a means by which something is done. So the sword is the means by which the children are terrified. And the way we write that in Latin is pueri, the boys, terrentur, are frightened, gladio. So gladio is in the ablative case, and there's no preposition in Latin that goes with it. But we translated it with our own English preposition by. Sometimes it can be a different kind of thing. So you could translate it with a with. Here's an example of that. The Romans conquer the town with swords. So in that case, with swords is again the ablative of means, the means by which the Romans conquered the town. And the way we write that in Latin is Romani oppidum gladiis vincunt. So again, gladiis is in the ablative plural without a preposition. The thing to take away and remember from this is that when we have a living agent, we call it ablative of agent, and we use the preposition a or ab. When we have a non-living agent or a means by which something is done, we call that an ablative of means, and there's no preposition with that one. So living agent, use a preposition. Non-living agent, do not use a preposition. Okay, moving on. Lesson 25. And we're almost done with our book here. We only have a couple more lessons. Lesson 25, we talk about the third conjugation, present system, passive voice. So again, we're going to have nothing very new. We're just going to substitute our passive personal endings for our active personal endings. So we get reg or, reg eris, regitor, regimor, regimini, reguntor. Then in the imperfect, we get regebar, regebaris, regebator, regebamor, regebamini, regebantor. And then in our future, we get regar, regeris, regetor, regemor, regemini, regentor. Okay, here again, you're going to see a problem. So the future second person singular is exactly the same as the present second person singular. We get regeris in both cases. So when you're translating a sentence, you'll have to know by the context of the sentence which tense you're going to use or translate. Okay? The passive of the third conjugation is formed according to the same principles as the first and second conjugations. Write out the conjugation of rego in the present system. Then go back and rewrite and substitute the passive personal endings for the active personal endings. Say this conjugation out loud repeatedly until you have mastered it. So that's another good piece of advice. You should be saying these out loud. If you feel weird about doing it to just by yourself, you can say it to a younger sibling. But it's really good to say them out loud and sort of chant them, because that's one of the many ways to trigger your memory and to keep things in your memory. So I strongly recommend that piece of advice from this lesson. Okay, at the bottom of your page 74, you have another 10-ish vocabulary words. These again are neuter, second declension words, so study those. And then on page 75, notice the irregularity in the second person singular of the present tense. Regeris rather than regiris. Highlight this form in your book. So the second person singular in the present doesn't have an I, it has an E. And that's just like the future tense in the other conjugations. So mark that. Although the third conjugation passive voice is formed exactly the same as the first and second conjugations, the similarities between the third conjugation present and future tenses make the mastery of this system much more difficult. diligence and persistence must be applied in learning these forms. So, because the future looks a lot like the present, you have to spend more time memorizing this and knowing the difference. And we'll do a lot of exercises, hopefully, together in class to help us remember these. Again, here's a note. Note that also the second person singular of both present and future are identical, except for the accent mark on the present tense form. These two forms are distinguished audibly and visually by the accented syllable. So in the present tense, we would say that regeris, whereas the future tense is regeris. Okay? So that's a sort of important, but not that important note to make. Okay, and that is all our material for this week, so I will let you go. I will see you in class, and God bless you.